Nadine, come in and say hello to us. Tell us a bit about what you're doing and some of your interests around sort of this general area of learning from the Global South.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you very much, David, for inviting me to be part of this morning's or today's discussion. And hello to everybody, wherever you are in the world. And it's an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you. And yes, hello from the University of Gloucestershire ISRM chapter, which I think almost on the day a year ago we have launched here. And basically, just to give you a little background to what we're doing here, David has started this wonderful initiative through the ISRM Student Network, whereby we have had the opportunity to set up university chapters, and the chapter is run by a group of our MBA global students. And we are basically, the reason why I'm saying this is because you'll understand in a moment why this is such an important part of what we're going to talk about today. But basically, it is run by students, and what we are hoping to do is to create a program of activities which connects the university with businesses, but also with communities, and really places the university as a hub into the community. And that's really the point that is important about this. Now, David mentioned the BUILD project. BUILD stands for Building Universities and Leading Disaster Resilience. And this is a project that I have been leading on behalf of the university over the last 5 years. I have been with the University of Gloucestershire for a very, very long time, 18 years now. And I have in the last few years done different things. I have joined the university as a lecturer. I am a senior lecturer in systemic resilience management, and that is quite central to what we're doing in Indonesia, because what we are doing is basically to look at systemic solutions for addressing what David calls wicked problems, such as capacity building, poverty alleviation, disaster resilience, and it's really the latter that I want to talk about. So the BUILD project has basically was launched 5 years ago, and we have been working with 8 universities in Indonesia to develop centers of excellence in disaster resilience. So basically, we have been working with universities across Southeast Asia for a long time, and have in the last few years concentrated our work very much on Indonesia. We have set up growth hubs, for example, and have through this created very, very strong working relationships with those institutions. And as you may recall, 2018 was a very disastrous year for Indonesia. We've had the big earthquake in Lombok, then in Palu, which I'm going to talk about in a moment as well, because Palu is one of the places where we are working. There was vast volcanic eruption, and that has really inspired us to come together and think about what we can do collaboratively to make Indonesia and to make the higher education sector and also the communities across Indonesia more resilient and more capable to deal with disasters. And why Indonesia? Indonesia has been described as a laboratory for disaster research. There are numerous disaster risks. Talk about earthquakes, talk about volcanic eruptions, flooding, bushfires, tsunamis. So we have seen all of that in abundance over the last few years. So it's a very challenging environment, but also, I suppose, when it comes to looking at learning in that regard, and also what universities can do to help communities and to help the country overall become more disaster resilient. It's certainly a very exciting, very, very challenging, but also very exciting case study. So essentially what we've done is to set up those centers of excellence in 8 universities across Indonesia. And we have worked in all regions, in Java, in Sumatra, in Kalimantan, in Maluku, and also in Sulawesi. And those centers that we have set up very much bring together the different disaster resilience related activities that take place within universities. And that includes, for example, curriculum development. It includes research research and development. It includes developing institutional disaster resilience governance as well. So basically how the institution itself can become more resilient. It includes disaster awareness training, which is what I'm going to talk about in more detail in a moment. And of course, also networking. This is where we are very, very pleased that David has joined us a few years ago as a member of the advisory panel, because that has really cemented the working relationship between BUILD and the ISRM. So David, once more, thank you very much for everything that you've done to support us in the last few years, and also for traveling to Jakarta last May to be one of our panel speakers at the final conference. So I think that was a very, very, very good discussion around some of the things that we're going to discuss today that we need to continue in the next few years, very certainly. So basically, this is what BUILD in a nutshell is about. We have also set up a national association which connects the centres and which will govern the activities in the future, make sure that we have a platform for inviting other universities to follow the same model, because what we have essentially done is to create a solution that is scalable, that can be also exported to other countries, and that can be a working model for what universities might do around the globe. And I mean, for me, just the model itself is a very powerful one, because it really encourages the university to think about what its role in society is. And this is where I believe the discussion around lessons learned from the Global South is very important, because for me, the single most powerful part of BUILD is the work with communities. And Indonesian universities, regardless of whether they're private or public universities, have a particular ethos, and that ethos is very much to serve the community. And you will see this ethos embedded across everything that they're doing. So in terms of where they invest their time, where they invest resources, you also see this reflected in individuals. So basically all my academic colleagues and also administrative colleagues in Indonesia are involved in community work and are really trying to connect what they do in the classroom, what they're doing, their research, with work in communities. And a lot of work within those universities is built around assisting communities in becoming more disaster resilient. And what we have done as part of BUILD, which is quite central to the future work in this area, is to create an earthquake preparedness training solution. And that solution includes a virtual reality environment, and it also includes a training methodology. So basically, it is a very simple scenario. It's basically about understanding how one can make one's home environment more disaster or more earthquake safe. And also it is about being prepared for the actual event. So the solution is essentially training individuals on how to behave during an earthquake scenario. So you have your headset on, and the actual moment when the earthquake strikes is simulated, and everything what happens, ceiling collapsing or fire is breaking out, all of that is simulated, and the task is to evacuate the building. Now, this is a very simple scenario, but one which across Indonesia is being experienced by hundreds of millions of individuals. And it's also something that across the world, wherever there is an earthquake-prone zone is, and Zagreb, which is where part of my family is from, in Croatia, has experienced exactly the same over the last few years, where some of my family members had to find their way out of their houses in the middle of the night. So basically, this is a scenario which is very simple but very powerful, and which over the past few months has been rolled out not just to students and staff, who are obviously part of the target group, but also to communities. And I'm very proud to say that actually the BUILD earthquake preparedness solution has been featured in the BBC's People Fixing the World podcast series as a very, very effective solution to training people in earthquake preparedness. And I think this is just one example where Indonesia has given a very, very good context for us to think about what a university can do in order to help communities become more disaster resilient. And with this come other questions. So for example, how do we reach communities which are perhaps marginalized, which have specific support needs? One of our universities in Yogyakarta is working very much with the families and with children. So they have developed quite innovative solutions to have conversations with children about disaster preparedness. So they're using little pop-up books, Legos, to simulate the scenarios in a way that children can understand. And they're also working specifically with families on disaster preparedness. So there are numerous examples that I could give you from Indonesia, where our universities are working with communities. And I think for me, the biggest lesson, and this is where I feel that Erasmus projects perhaps need to be reimagined a little bit, because when we started working with our colleagues in Indonesia, and when we started putting the proposals together, it's very much a notion of building capacity and Western universities coming in to assist universities in the global south, or basically across Southeast Asia or in developing regions to build their capacity. And I suppose for me, that never was quite right, because I think it needs to be very much a two-way process. I mean, yes, maybe we have got capabilities in terms of imagining a systemic solution and bringing some of the expertise. But I suppose for me, working in Indonesia, working on this project has made me think, so what do we as a university actually do to support our communities? And I think this is really, really important. And this is also where the chapter of the ISRM that we have established here at the university comes in, because the University of Gloucestershire is talking about being connected to communities. But I don't think that we as an institution actually really understand or can articulate what that means. Yes, we are doing different things. We have got colleagues who are working, for example, with some of the more deprived areas in Cheltenham or in Gloucester on community work. So one of the initiatives that my colleagues have been talking about in recent weeks is basically connecting with communities through art. And having a
we'll come to that. Let's take a break there, Nadine, because we can move on, and I want to get the conversation going. And I think you've set very strongly the framework and the established where University of Gloucestershire is, where Build is. But let's take a break there, and then we can sort of move on to have the interaction and engagement.
Okay.
And you said thank you to me for my involvement. Thank you for the opportunity. I mean, it was as I said, it was one of the really strong projects that I've been involved in, and I think it has, and we'll talk about it a bit more, but I think it has real lessons. I know it has, because I talk about that at government level and sort of, UN agency and etc. and EU agency level. And all I do is give a very brief outline of what it is, and they go, that makes sense. That makes. So we'll come to that. Okay, so let's put that to the side for the moment. So that was Build, and that's University of Gloucestershire. That's Build within the Indonesian environment.